Hi, I'm Jessie.
Hi, I'm Ryan, and you're listening to Your Therapist is Not Okay.
On this episode, we are continuing on about why you won't be friends with us when you pay us to see us, and also what we think about what the relationship between client and therapist really is. This is our point of view, might not be every therapist, but stay tuned and you'll hear from us about how we feel about being in relationship with you as a client.
This episode is really inspired by that kind of question that we were talking about last time with the client side issue of feeling like I'm buying friendship.
Mm,
And that feeling really difficult or sad for a lot of clients, especially with the kind of context that we gave of the loneliness epidemic, people feeling really isolated. People may be feeling like therapy is the only place they have a friend for some period of time. Um, and the first thing that I wrote about this in our little outline was, well, we don't feel like it's friendship. It's actually something really different.
yeah.
And that's not meant to be like pithy or mean or dismissive of the value and the meaning of the therapeutic relationship. But we kind of want to move a little bit past the idea of friends because we think there's a little bit more to that. Let's
Yeah.
let's talk more about this, how we as the therapists feel about this idea of friendship.
I think it makes a lot of sense when a client develops a beautiful, deep relationship with us. And this is especially true for you and I as relational psychodynamic therapists. Our
Mhm.
whole idea of being effective is intimacy, diving into your world, figuring out what it is that is really at the root of what's going on. And that takes sessions, that can take years, but it also creates a very unique bond and a unique bond that actually is for us. Like, this is not a one size fits all. It's incredible how we morph because we get inside jokes. We really
Mhm.
get to develop this special bond and relationship with our clients. And so it can feel like friendship. And I feel that in my body too when we're joking or laughing. I um I look forward to seeing clients. And often what will come up is this aspect of, I wish I was your friend. I wish I
Mhm.
could take you to brunch. I wish we could go out for drinks. I wish I could find out what's going on for you. I had a client this week literally say, it sucks because I'm going to spend the whole hour talking about me. But all I want to do is find out how your week was. Like, what is actually going on? And I made a pretty casual
Mhm.
comment saying, like, this is a good space for us to be able to just talk about you. She's like, but I want to know if you were having a bad week, the client said. And I was like,
Mhm.
no, my week's been pretty good. She's like, well, you wouldn't tell me if it wasn't. And I was like, actually, you're not wrong. I probably wouldn't be like, oh, my dumpster fire of a life. Let me tell you, girl. Like, I probably wouldn't. But it was that interesting kind of intersection you're talking about of like, and we talked about this last episode of like, you really don't get a lot of
Mhm.
us. You get so much in the relationship, but you really don't get to find out what's actually going on deeply. Um, any client that saw me might have found out that Maggie was not so like well recently. Like she had quite a
Yeah.
sickness. And so clients might tell me that 'cause she's quite needy and coming up to like have pets as she was like fighting pneumonia. But they get that window in, but they're not going to find out about truly like what I'm struggling with or what's going on. And that can feel really tricky to kind of really navigate from the client side, as we were talking about last episode. It's also tricky for us to navigate too, as we're taking on this very deep but very different level of relationship, as you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just, of course, yeah, there's those really intimate, connected feelings on our end too. Like you were saying, Jesse, like those shared jokes, the language that we build together to talk about things and think about things that are very often unique for each client. Of course, there's a through line of us and all the therapy that we do, things that we say, ways that we speak, ways we show up, but then there's also those bits that get customized for every client that just become something shared and really special.
Mm.
But one of the wonderful ways that it's different from a friendship is that even though you might not get to know those facts and bits of information about us, you also don't have to. Because
Yes.
think about how you might be able to show up differently or use the space less than you need as someone in therapy, as someone who's coming to us for this service. If you knew that were having a terrible day, if you
Yeah.
knew that we had just had a fight with our partner, or we have something going on in our families, um, it might be kind of difficult to then take the space. If you said what you're doing, and then we said, and I'm having a really shitty week, and here are all the reasons. Anytime we have that experience in a friendship group, there tends to then be this, oh, we need to focus on you now, which is lovely in a friendship dynamic where that ball can get passed back and forth.
That is a really good point. I was just thinking about often if you're that friend in a friendship group that kind of focuses on the other, I wonder where that started. Because a lot of times you take that role because it's a place of comfort, which means that you probably might have had a parental figure that took up that space and you figured out that role that became the way that you provide care for your parental figure in order to have love. And it very quickly, we could very quickly become that parental figure that you focus on us when truly your needs are supposed to be met, just like they should have when you were a kid. And so, in some ways, by not giving you that, we're also allowing you a chance to breathe and to get your needs met without having to impact or think about the impact of the needs of another. We've got
Mhm.
ourselves so that we can have you. And that is something that I haven't thought about those two things kind of like linking before.
Mm.
But isn't it true? Like, how many times have we sacrificed our own needs? Because it seems like someone's needs are bigger. And
Yeah.
that can happen if we actually probably shared with you. If I went to brunch, for example, with you, I think something fundamentally would be lost.
Yeah.
If I shared, if we were equal. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's probably not uncommon for the clients that are asking us about that and really noticing that they don't hear about our day are probably going to be those clients that you're talking about who have had some experience of having to hold that role, having to be the listener, it being familiar to not take care of their own needs, or clients who feel selfish if they focus on their own needs, which is a lot of folks that show up to therapy
Hmm.
struggle to say, this is what I need. These are my expectations. These are my limits. These are my boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be a great place to learn how to be reasonably selfish. Take
Ooh,
care of yourself.
yeah. Reasonably selfish is a great term. I'm gonna hold
Mm.
on to that.
Yeah. I would think about there's like such a shaming kind of assumption behind the word selfish.
Uh,
But it can be beautiful to just like be able to kind of stand confidently and firmly in the place that you want to be in.
yeah.
Not in a way that is aggressive or controlling towards others, but just to kind of say like, this is what I need.
Yeah. We've said this before, and others have written about it, but psychotherapy really is a petri dish that you
Mm,
get to try out who you want to be. It can be in telling a joke if you're relatively shy, maybe talking to, I'm going to use myself, like talking to a woman. It can
mm,
be really cool to kind of play with boundaries, anger, rupture and repair. It can also be a really cool way that we mirror what you might want in a relationship. It's my time to talk. It's my time to share. Can I take the
mm,
floor? All of these things create between me and a client a living laboratory where you actually can then bring that out to every other relationship. So it's not just what we're talking about, it's the very relationship that can actually then
mm.
mirror what you might actually want with your friends and loved ones.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's often this kind of experience with the non-reciprocity of the relationship, with that kind of one-sidedness, where we can be like really intentional about facilitating growth and change, partially because that relationship dynamic is a little bit frustrating to us psychologically. And this is something about psychodynamic theory that we're not going to dive super deep into, but just on the surface level to know that having a little bit of that tension allows those needs and frustrations, those things that we struggle with, to come to the surface, which is a very vulnerable and uncertain process. So it's no surprise that it is challenging and uncomfortable for clients. It is for everyone.
Mm,
And with the relationship being less reciprocal, we are able to kind of hold that and care for that. And
mm,
you can grow in your ability to tolerate those feelings of vulnerability and uncertainty, which are also part of everyday life, right? It's another connection to the dish Jesse was talking about. Is like actually in everyday life, it is vulnerable, uncomfortable, scary to try to connect with others because you don't know how it's going to go. You don't know how they're going to react.
no. And I'm also thinking about with anyone you want to share your story with, that's probably not us as your therapist.
Mm.
You have to manage their reactions in a way because they probably have some sort of stake in your story. If you're talking about something, you have to worry about whether or not that's going to hurt them, about whether or not they're going to have an opinion about this because they can see both sides. They may want to talk to you about how you can just get better because it makes them feel uncomfortable. How many
Mhm.
times, how many times have you told a story that's maybe really raw and vulnerable for you? And then you almost have to say, I'm okay, because someone else is having a deep emotional reaction to your trauma. Like as if hearing your story is actually so impactful for them that you actually are then playing that caregiver role. And so all of these things when you're in these relationships, of course they're part of that circle. They know your life. They probably know the characters that are involved in your life. And then sharing can be really complicated. And then
Yeah.
we silent those parts of ourselves because we don't want to share. Let me give you an example. If you're really struggling as a brand new mom, maybe we have postpartum depression. Maybe we're fearing some of these deep feelings of just like regret, potentially. And you want to talk to your best friend about it. And you can't because she just had a miscarriage. And so you hide that part that you're struggling with
Mhm.
because the very thought of talking to your friend about this, when you already have something that they want, can be incredibly silencing.
Yeah, yeah. And the cool thing about your therapist is you don't know if they've had a miscarriage. Maybe they have, as we've talked about many times in this podcast. Your therapist has had all kinds of different experiences, wonderful and terrible, um, and you don't have to know about them, right? Just as many by percentage therapists who can potentially conceive have had miscarriages as the percentage of people who are not therapists and have had miscarriages.
Yeah.
So it's there's is much of a chance as there is with anyone else that they've experienced that. But our job that we've signed up to do is to hold and care for our own feelings, make sure we have spaces to make sure we're taking care about that.
Yeah.
But we can just show up in kind of unbiased way. Unbiased in the sense of, as Jesse was saying, we don't have that stake in your story.
Yeah.
We are, I always say that I am biased in the sense that I am very on my client's side. I'm not I don't like not have a favorite in this contest. It's my client,
It's
but
you.
I'm unbiased, right? But I'm unbiased in the sense of like, I don't have that stake in my story. It doesn't need to be about me or about the outcome that I want it to have or how I want you to feel.
This is a really good launching in point to what you were saying in the beginning.
Mm,
We're not friend. We don't have a stake in your story. So let's actually start to think about this relationship differently. I think it's about time we do. How are we
mm.
different? How are we relational and in relationship? And how does that matter? And how can we paint it differently?
Absolutely. Yeah. Instead of thinking of it as a loss that we aren't friends,
Yeah.
focusing more on the gain. What is the benefit of the fact that we're not there, that we're not friends, that we're actually something different and perhaps deeper, and that we don't care any less for our clients just because they're not our friends. The care is actually very deep and very protected.
Yeah.
It's, because we don't have that stake, because we are not in your world in the same way, we can hold that kind of unconditional positive regard for you because we just always see how you're doing your best, always see how you're striving towards being amazing. Um, but that again, we miss you guys when you're gone. We
Yeah.
wonder how you're doing, you
Hmm.
know? We don't love when endings have to happen with clients. Typically, that's a challenging thing for us too. We're going to miss you. We're going to wonder how it all went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When you send me that email telling me about, let's say, the birth of a child or how the meeting went, oh, goodness, I get so excited. Not every therapist accepts emails. I am a therapist who does. And I love that. Like, I deeply care from you when you're in session and outside of session. So the care has to be re-envisioned. Stop thinking that because you're paying me, I don't care. That is such a misnomer of like what we actually do.
Yeah.
Any good therapist I've ever met in my whole life, Ryan, I'll see if you agree with this. If we won the lottery today, we'd be back to work tomorrow because we need to know how you're doing. We're so invested in you. This is a vocation. It's not a profession that we're gunning for retirement in. Do you agree with that?
I feel that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if all good therapists do or not. I'm nervous to make such a bold claim,
Oh
but
yeah,
I
that's just my.
definitely feel that way. That like I think that what would change if I were to win the lottery is the way I would show up in certain regards. Like I wouldn't be stressed about things, right? Like I could just like choose and design the exact office space that I wanted and have really curated times that work for clients and me. So I would probably work less
Mm,
as a therapist with a lot of money, but you're right, I wouldn't quit working.
yeah.
I wouldn't cancel on all my clients the next day. I wouldn't just be like, I'm done practicing.
Yeah, peace
I would
out.
just know that I can work towards like a more sustainable, because as we've talked about before, like your therapist also works their ass off,
Mhm.
because we're all in this capitalist situation together. So,
Mm.
um, but yeah, the I'm here for the work because I love it, because it matters, because I love my clients.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you're right. Maybe not everyone thinks this, but they should. They should think this.
Don't shit on me.
I think that like building your personal world, being able to have you play is so awesome. That's really what keeps us excited for this field. The fact that, like even after 30 sessions, you can surprise me with something. I'm
Yeah.
constantly learning. I'll never know it all. That we build this relationship and we create this beautiful ecosystem between us. And yet there's still surprise and still delight, even as we build. Like that is part of this relational dynamic. And we're not neutral parties, as you said perfectly, Ryan, but we're also somebody that delights in your successes. When you have a breakthrough, we're not only there to hold you in it, because that can be actually kind of scary, but we're also pumped. Like it's exciting to see these changes. Like we love it. We also are absolutely there for you when things are not going well, and we're invested in that. So there's nothing about this that doesn't equal care. It just maybe doesn't equal that kind of reciprocity that you've been known to have in other relationships. And the reason why is
Mhm.
that no other relationship in your life is one in which you get to become somebody that's working through your darkest material in order to be a new person. That's what we're here for. That then those
Yeah.
relationships become stronger around you as you become stronger in your self-awareness.
hmm hmm Yeah, it really allows for that building your own way of doing things, because we can give you so much space. We can give you so much space instead of needing you to be a certain way, which many of the other relationships in our lives ask us to do, ask us to need. Yeah. We talked a little bit in the last episode about AI, and specifically ChatGPT, and just knowing the way that it can show up for you, which we've said for some people has been really helpful, can be really helpful.
Yeah.
And it can be very validating as well because it tends that before it gives you advice or gives you a response, says some sort of acknowledgement about what you've been trying or what you're feeling. It's very skilled at that. And that is one of the ways actually in which we're so different from them
Yeah.
because you don't know that we're going to respond encouragingly or supportively or with this kind of exact acknowledgement or say like, yes, you're so right. Because sometimes as therapists, we're going to challenge you. Sometimes we're going to fail you and get it wrong.
Mm.
And even if 95 plus percent of the time we are going to be encouraging and supportive, you don't know that the way that you know it with ChatGPT. So there is this risk that you have to take, this vulnerability. And that risk is important because in other relationships now and in the future in your life, you're going to have to take risks to build authentic connections with people who are unpredictable, unlike AI.
Yeah.
So you don't know that I'm going to be supportive. You have to take that risk, just like you're gonna have to take that risk when you meet a new person and you're like, "Do you want to be friends?"
Yeah. Absolutely. When we remember things about your life, it's not because of a memory chip in a computer or an algorithm or all of that. It's because we're here, because we're real, because we're gritty. And that risk you're taking in real time is, as you perfectly said, Ryan, is relationship. We live
Hmm.
in an age right now where those risks are terrifying. That fear of abandonment, rejection, being alone, the loneliness epidemic. We're living in an age where that quick connection is something we crave at 24/7. We're geared to have sound bites as answers. And yet, when we remember or when we get it wrong, it's because you're getting all of us and you're getting the good and the bad. We're not polished because why? How could we be? You're not. Like, we're just ourselves as humans. And I think that that's where our humanity comes in. And that's where every
Hmm.
relationship you have will come in. Too often we think of relationships as what can I get instead of how can I learn from another. That curiosity can get sideswept when we think, what am I gaining here? And so by having this kind of element of starting to take those risks of being in a rupture, creating that repair, staying through the grit of it all,
Hmm.
truly that is one of the most incredible things that you can do in life. Those are the things that grow you. Generally speaking, it won't be the quick. Do you want me to tell you 5 parts about how this relationship might match avoidance? Like you're not, you're going to learn, but you're not going to grow and become that self-aware individual unless you do that work
Hmm.
through risk and with another.
Yeah. Yeah, because all that stuff is about how we meet other people, not how we're validated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that loneliness that you're talking about is something that we see coming up all the time,
Yeah.
right? Especially with a desire for a quick connection, with the way so much of our world right now is built around apps and meeting up with people quick, whether it's for dating or some kind of friendship groups, or getting quick answers to problems. Like everything is kind of built around a certain sense of speed and urgency. Um, but some of that can end up feeling maybe a little unfulfilling. Like we're
Mm,
not actually having that really deep connection.
yeah.
Like we're not actually having something really authentic. Like we're feeling actually very isolated. We don't have that sense of community that we maybe wish we had, perhaps once had at some point in our life. Um, so I feel like I especially hear this coming up from folks that are in a life transition. Like
Yep.
last time we talked about moving to a different city for, you know, for living the dream or for economic opportunity or whatever has forced you to migrate to whatever degree of choice you've had in that migration. You are now maybe feeling isolated. Maybe you're in early adulthood, so you've just left spaces where you felt a lot of connection. Like some folks feel like really connected, at school, whether that's secondary school or post-secondary school, where you just are kind of surrounded by social events and people your age and making a lot of connections. There can be a big dip in the feeling of connection and kind of understanding direction in life once you finish whatever amount of education you're planning to or able to access. And then suddenly the way you meet and make friends becomes totally different. You
Mm,
especially see it, or at least I do, in with men.
yes.
Men come to therapy, and very often the way men are acculturated, socialized in North America is to be independent, to be tough, to not be vulnerable, to not reach out. Um, and I think some of this stuff is gradually changing, and yet it still can really feel like you don't have the social skills, the social capital to build relationships and connections like that without feeling too vulnerable, which you've been told over and over again not to be.
Yes.
And so you end up isolated.
Yes. And we come in as these incredible kind of sources for you to play.
Mhm.
I actually really hate the misnomer that that men don't know how to be in touch with vulnerability or emotions. I've never met one. I've met a lot of people
Mm,
in my day. I'm old, like, and I've just never seen that because like it's this aspect of being able to have a space where you can is really all it
mm.
needs. And the encouragement that each stepping stone to vulnerability has been met. That's what we can provide. And I think that that is kind of countercultural right now. And that listening is something
Mhm.
that we don't get,
Right.
truly. And so I think that I like that. That is the way I would like to describe psychotherapy. I think
Mm,
that's really beautiful. Finding these spaces and relationships where we can feel like we can just authentically be. We can be met, you're asking questions, you're getting it, and we're beside you in it. And you can bring that into your other friendships. How do I want to ask questions? How do I want to be curious? How do I want to have boundaries? And why does that mean that
mhm.
each of us can love in a way that feels really grounded?
It's absolutely something that I love seeing when I'm working with men. Just giving them the space
Yeah.
and responding to what they share with non-defensiveness, with curiosity, with encouragement. You just see them relax. You see the shoulders go down. You see the forehead smooth out. You just see them kind of relax into that. And just like you're saying, Jesse, they have so much depth and care and tenderness that they want to share. You just have to give them the space.
Yeah.
And then having someone meet that and hold that and encourage that then helps them to feel confident and comfortable to show up with those beautiful vulnerabilities and relationships. And that's what makes relationships deep and lasting.
Yeah.
A wild night with the guys, the gals, or the non-binary pals will give you some memories and some connection, but it's not going to last the way that deep, vulnerable connection does.
And learning how to do that, learning what you really
Yeah.
think about that, that transverses anybody. If you were that friend, as we were saying in the beginning of episode, that's always caring for others, it actually might feel a little bit selfish or guilt-ridden to have your needs met. But as you
Mhm.
start to realize that, you're like, oh, I can take up space. I'm not too much if I have needs. And that those are the rewritings that make good therapy. And whatever your presenting concern is, very quickly, that often will go kind of on the sidelines as you've either worked through it pretty well to get to deeper things. What's really going on here? What are the roots of self-worth that you're navigating? And I think that that takes time, but it also takes that courageous risk that comes in a therapeutic relationship.
Mhm.
And funnily enough, though, I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
How do you find a therapist nowadays?
Right. Actually, this kind of came up when we were planning and we were talking about swiping on apps. We were like, wait, you mean like people swipe on Psych today?
Yeah.
There's not a swipey feature set up or whatever, but we're scrolling through there, looking at people's pictures, looking at people's descriptions, and just kind of like sifting through just in the same way. And it's a
Yeah.
really cool. phrase that Jesse came up with for her company, Centered Self, that finding a therapist shouldn't be as hard as online dating.
I really think that it can feel really weird. Like when you have this 20-minute consult, it can feel like speed dating your therapist.
Absolutely. And it's not uncommon for folks looking for a therapist to set up a handful of those consults and kind of be looking for that fit and for that feeling of comfort and connection and having the feeling that their needs will be met by that person.
It was kind of why we started Centered Self in some ways to try to have a
Yeah.
place that feels safe where like we've done some of the good work so that you can come in and
Mhm.
book someone and feel safe and met and seen. Everyone at Centered Self is basically like hook, line, and sinker into relationship and authenticity. And that's been really important for us. Because it's daunting. It does kind of feel a little bit like Hinge as you're reading the profile. They can
Mhm.
blend together. And so
Oh yes.
I'll tell you guys this now. If you ever need to find a therapist that you really trust, you can DM us, right? Like we will help you. And we really care about clients getting really good care. We're really, in case you haven't noticed, very passionate about what we do. And
Yeah.
so I know that the computer is always there, 24/7. But if you want a connection with somebody where there's risk, authenticity, and care, find a therapist that can really meet you in that. I promise you it'll be
Yeah.
life-changing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That honestly feels like that's kind of what we wanted to talk about with this. It just to really recognize and honor the depth of connection, the uniqueness of the relationship that you can have with your therapist, and the way that can set you up for success and strong relationships in other areas of your life. Um, yeah, and that really is the takeaway for me: is that therapy not being friendship isn't a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it truly is. Thanks for listening, you guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, check out our others. And stay tuned for even more episodes coming up.
Follow us and leave a review on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please tell your friends.
You can also follow us on Instagram too at Your Therapist Is Not Okay. Also, if you have any questions that you want us to answer, send us a DM there. We would love to answer your questions. And a lot of our topics come from listeners just like you.